welcome to our Connecting the Dots podcast. And today in the studio with me, I've got Audrey Anderson, Chief Executive of Scottish Out of School Care Network. Audrey, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Okay.
We met last week. We talked all things school-age childcare, the wider childcare sector, sustainability challenges, opportunities, so many really interesting things. And we're hoping to replicate some of that in our chat today. So,
Great.
Would you like to start by telling our listeners just a little bit about you, Audrey, and what's brought you to where you are now in your career?
Okay, thanks very much for having me along. Delighted to be here to share my journey, my knowledge and what we're going to do. So up until now, my background was in ELC, always had been. Like many of the sector, I started at my local playgroup as committee, moved on to chair and then took over as manager. And whilst I was doing that, I was gaining my childcare qualification up until then I'd been in conferences and events and banqueting. So it was a huge change. But once you have children, your life changes and, you move with that. So I really found a love of the sector. So I became manager. I was there for about 10 years in the playgroup. At that point, we were going through masses of change in ELC at that time. We were going from just being a charity, small run community playgroup into basically a funded provider. We were getting the introduction of the increase in hours, went from 480 to 600, then 980 or something like that all that time. So I went through all that change. We changed from the curriculum for excellence to 3 to 5 to curriculum for excellence. We did all these changes. So it was a big curve in the ELC sector, which I was really part of. So after that, then my children got a bit older and I then went and moved to position within Earlier Scotland, which was SPPA as it was back in the year. So I moved there as service manager there, which was amazing. It was a great opportunity. It was a third sector. I loved it. They were a similar organisation to where I am now with SOSCN, in that they were a membership organisation supporting their members, but they also did direct services, worked with vulnerable families and children. And I was really passionate about the work they did and loved my time there. So then everything was changing again. 1140 hours were coming into be introduced, and I then at that point moved to West Lothian Council. I really moved there because I wanted to see the introduction of 1140. I started in the January and the implementation was in the August. So I had this sort of planning of that going along. Yeah. Learned a huge amount there. Supported services who were, having to make a huge change with, the increase of hours and everything like that. So that was great and, really worked. Got the knowledge of a local authority perspective of how they're implementing it in between all that COVID hit. And this was probably my first kind of experience of school-age childcare, because the summer following that I set up the summer hubs for the school-age childcare sector.
Okay.
So we ran it from like a sports centre and we worked with children from 5 to 14. The children of key workers.
It's amazing what you can do when you have to, isn't
Honestly,
it? Incredible.
It was incredible. At first, it was a lot of resistance because we were using earlier staff because they weren't working, obviously, because
makes sense,
nurses weren't there. And they were a bit like, we don't work with older children. Actually, same children, same qualifications. And first couple of weeks were a bit tough. But honestly, see, by the end of it, it was what an experience to have done that. We obviously set it up as a school-age childcare provision, a holiday provision in the sports centre. We're just terrified of the swimming pool. Every day I was checking to make sure it was locked. So that was my kind of first experience of school-age childcare. And then, of course, we went back to ELC and stuff like that. But then I was happy in the council, toddling along, and then I saw the position for SOSCN. Yeah. And there was honestly, such a pull to it. Yeah. I knew SOSCN from before, for when I was in Earlier Scotland. We had a really good relationship with SOSCN. We were childcare, they were ELC, they were school-age childcare. So I had a good knowledge of the organisation, and I think the fact they were a membership organisation, and I knew firsthand what benefits a member organisation could be to the sector when I had the support of Earlier Scotland or SPPA in my playgroup. I really wanted to move to give that back, and very aware of the proposed changes that could be coming into the school-aged childcare sector, and really wanted to be part of that and try to drive forward to, get the best outcomes for the sector. So that's why that's my journey to where I am now with
Brilliant.
that. So.
And a journey with loads of learning and loads of change and so many interesting things
Even
you've
since I've
experienced
started.
along the way.
Uh-huh.
You're clearly a woman with a resilience for change and ability to handle that change and sort of act swiftly to take the opportunity, which I guess is the prime situation we're in at the moment. You're fairly new in role, still under a year, still in role as Chief Exec at SOSCN. So I guess, what have you been doing that first sort of 8 months or 7 or 8 months that it is? I can't count. Since you took on the role, what's your vision for the future of SOSCN? It's a long-established and well-respected organisation, but it is going through a period of change, and it's a challenging time in the sector. But it's also a time that brings opportunity, and it could be a really exciting time. So what are you excited about, and what changes, and what's your vision for it, I suppose?
Okay. I mean, it is a really exciting time, and that's one of the reasons I moved, was because of the opportunity this was going to present. So my first few months have been incredibly busy, like really full on, and really energising, engaging. I'm thoroughly enjoying, being in the sector, and being so welcomed by everybody I meet. As you say, SOSCN have been supporting the sector for over 30 years. It's a long time, to have that. They started off as a tiny wee organisation just with a few school-aged childcare services and evolved from that. And it's grown into a national organisation. I think they've got about 1,000 members.
That's big, yeah.
Yeah. But I would say recently, or people didn't really know some don't really know an awful lot about SOSCN, what they did, certainly in education sector, even within the sector themselves, because so many are small, maybe community-led, school-aged childcare that really just survived for themselves and they didn't know. So my priority was to be out there, to be visual, to know that they've got an organisation to support them, and to listen to and advocate for our members. As I say, I know firsthand the difference that makes, knowing you've got that support behind you. So, I've been visiting many services as I can, so it's been quite a busy time to get around. Yeah. It's great to meet the first-hand the staff, the children, and understand the realities that they're facing actually at ground level. If you're not in a service and not speaking to them and seeing them, you can't really fully understand it. But once you go in, you actually get a feel as soon as you go in. So my vision for SOSCN is to be the forefront for the school-aged childcare sector. We have to be. We're their organisation, to be the trusted voice for our members and advocate strongly their views, and to ensure they're feeling supported. As you say, we are at a critical moment in the childcare sector. Currently, we've got the Scottish Government consultation, which is live.
It is,
till the 18th of May. And that's looking at creating a legal definition for school-aged childcare.
Okay. So we're looking for as many people to complete that before the 18th of May as we possibly can get. Because if you don't have your say, you can't complain about the outcome, can you?
This is a huge opportunity for them anybody to feed into this consultation, to get their views known, and to have a say in how it's going to look in the future. They're looking at things, you're considering things like staffing ratios, premises, qualification requirements. All of these are issues which have been about for a while in the school-aged childcare, and it's an opportunity now to make that change.
And they are the kind of things that people talk about, aren't they? Should the qualification be the same as for early years and school-aged childcare? Should the registration requirements be the same? So if those are the things in the consultation, then it's a great opportunity for the sector to stand up and say, this is the way we believe it should be, because there's so much expertise in the sector. We absolutely need to harness that. So
and anybody that I meet within the sector, are so passionate about what they deliver. So they have got this right to say, this is what we need as a sector to to develop it, really. So we're obviously working closely with Scottish Government to develop the sector to get the right definition for school-aged childcare, which is separate from ELC.
It is separate. It absolutely is separate. Yeah, and the children's needs are completely different.
Completely different. Yeah. The children ELC is still about learning. You're starting your journey. You've got a curriculum for that. You haven't got that in school-aged childcare. I very much believe, the children have got, and young people, the rights to relax and play and have a really good social experience after school. We all need that downtime and children, but to have it in such a caring, nurturing environment, and that's where we're different from ELC.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important, isn't it, that we provide that. And aren't Scottish Government incredibly lucky that the expertise of the sector is out there and available to them? So as they are at this point where they're talking about expanding school-aged childcare, then it's brilliant to be able to tap into that fabulous resource that's out there, isn't it?
Yeah, because they're the people that know.
Of course they are, absolutely.
And it is a starting point. I'm looking at it as a starting point of, developing the sector and things. It's such an essential service. And
becoming more and more so. Yeah. So, absolutely. Yeah. So, we've talked about we've talked about SOSCN. What about looking at the wider childcare sector as a whole, I suppose? And what would you say is something that's we're great at? We, in the broadest sense of the word. Yeah. So we as a nation, as a sector, whatever. What do we do really well in our childcare sector? And what kind of things do you think we could do that a bit better? That's really not great. Or an alternative way to look at it, I suppose, if you had the pleasure, maybe not quite the right word, of sitting in the First Minister's seat for the day and you could make some changes, what kind of changes would you make? So start with the good and then we could do.
I mean, childcare in Scotland is widely recognised as being high quality, rights-based approach. An example is the, introduction of 11 and 40 hours. It's a real strength and something that I'm hoping we will be able to reflect, that in school-aged childcare sector. However, there is significant work still to be done in the system. You need to make it fully affordable, flexible, and equitable, and it's what suits families' needs. School-aged childcare, unlike early in childcare, there's no direct funding going towards it, and this creates affordability issues for families. ELC, they have got funding. Yep. School-aged childcare, we don't. So, current system can create challenges. For example, if you've got a child who's in ELC and a child in school,
it's really difficult. You can't be at two places at the same time.
How can you juggle that? Yeah. The ELC hours, funded hours, possibly don't align to the school, actual school hours. Possibly parents have changed working patterns to suit ELC, and then suddenly that child moves to school and we're looking at changing hours again, so they don't align. Often it's a juggling act if you've got children in both services, different locations, different hours, etc. Particularly for mothers. I mean, I know we hate saying it,
it's
but
true though. The burden of the care does fall on mums. So
it's changing slightly. I think there's a slight shift there, but still, predominantly, it's often you're hearing of mothers who have to change working hours or give up their jobs in order because they just cannot juggle childcare. So that's
certainly one of the things that led to our work at Flexible Childcare Services, because we recognise that very often it's mums who are having to work either below their skill level or less hours than they want to, if they can work at all, because it's really, really difficult to manage childcare. Yeah.
So we're hearing the other thing in the sector which is causing a concern at the moment is we're hearing from the sector about unregistered clubs which are operating. Again, activity clubs or even unregistered services who aren't registered with Care Inspectorate. There's different requirements. You need to register Care Inspectorate, and if you don't meet that, some who wish to register cannot, but there's also some who choose not to register. Yeah. So there's a big concern in the sector at the moment of the increase in unregistered clubs and the impact that will have on the registered services who operate. Running costs are higher because they have to operate within regulation with regard to qualifications, ratios, etc. Whereas unregistered clubs can operate cheaper. And obviously what we do want is to give parents the flexibility and make it affordable So absolutely, parents are possibly choosing unregulated services, but then the concern in the sector is that these services aren't of such a high quality. Yeah. So that's something that, we have to, as a whole childcare sector, look at that.
Totally, yeah. And I guess you can understand the reason, I suppose, for some of the activity clubs, because it's certainly, as a working mum, when my girls were younger, it was really hard to let them go to some of the clubs that they could do after school because I needed them in childcare. So to be able to use those clubs informally as a form of childcare that children can go to after school while parents are still working and the children are getting the opportunities, I can absolutely see why people would do that and why it's attractive. But we need to find a way that can work alongside our existing providers, don't we? And to give some reassurance to people that there is some oversight and regulation of those services. So we need to understand what that's going to look like, and perhaps that forms part of that consultation. So again, it's another reason why people need to be speaking up, isn't it? And sharing their views on these things.
You're totally right. I mean, when my boys were younger, if they wanted to go to the rugby after school club or something after school with an interest that they were interested in, I would absolutely be sending them to that. Number one, your child is going and doing an activity which they're interested in, especially, I would say, maybe as the children get a bit older.
Yes.
A classic maybe school-age childcare service. Children, I mean, we hear that reported from the school-age childcare service as well. When they get to like primary 5, 10, 11, they're getting a bit bored with it. Yeah. So if you have an activity that suits your child, absolutely, I would, as a parent, I'd be making that choice. Yeah. But we have to work alongside, and there's room for both.
But there absolutely is, yeah. And we need to know that it's safe and it's regulated in to the right level. It may not be the same level currently, but it does need a level of regulation in there so that people are reassured and know that it's a safe place. And so there's a trust between the existing providers and those services, and maybe then that gives them opportunities to work together and start to collaborate on some things.
I think everybody's prime concern is always the safety of the child, and make sure that they're being well cared for and it's safe, and there's the correct safeguarding in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's built into the UNCRC, isn't it? About the right to be kept safe from harm. So, perfect.
So they say the only other challenge that I would say, or not other challenge, it's other challenges, but one of the other challenges about the workforce, retention of the workforce. School-age childcare practitioners, staff are qualified to the same level as ELC, but they don't get the same benefits really, because basically working hours are often reduced just because of the time that a school-age childcare service would operate. Often pay is lower. If the local authorities or funded providers are possibly able to offer higher rate of pay.
That's right, yeah. There's a requirement for them to do the living wage, isn't there?
Of course it is.
Part of that partnership.
We try to push that in services, but if it's cost between surviving or not doing the real living wage, some services just, whilst they want to, can't do it. Yeah. So we do see a concern in the sector of staff maybe being in the school-age childcare service and then seeing an opportunity with ELC and moving over there because, they've got their own finances to think about. Of
course, yeah, absolutely. And then you see them move from the ELC PVI sector to the ELC local authority sector. And again, for that, not because of any issues with their employer, but because they have a family and a home and they've got responsibilities that they need to bring in finances for as well, haven't they? So yeah. And I guess some of that workforce thing is about how do we fund the whole sector fairly so that we can create equity in pay scales and all of those things, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because our workforce are caring for our youngest citizens, our most vulnerable citizens very often as well, and the future. So we absolutely have to value, and unfortunately it's still a role that is often not properly valued, isn't it?
So that's, I'd say that's not a new issue.
No, it's not. No.
That's been about forever. But, again, we're at this time of potential change. So this is something we can be really trying to push in the direction to support the sector.
Yeah, and every politician I'm listening to at the moment is talking about expansion and growing childcare and the benefits it can bring. So they need to make sure they have the budget to do that and the plans to do that, don't they? So
interesting time to see where it's going.
It certainly is, absolutely. So all those things we've been talking about, then those providers that are out there, then, and there's some incredibly creative and innovative, and they're so dedicated and passionate about the work that they do. They're facing lots of challenges just now, but we've talked about the opportunities that come with that. What would you say to them to give them hope at the moment? I think it's probably around that. Be involved and have your say, isn't it? And despite the fact that we're all saying we're frustrated with the politicians and what they're saying, there is a cross-party commitment to childcare, so we know it's not going away.
Yes. I mean, every news article, every social media post you're seeing just now is different pledges to increase the childcare sector. From 9 months, but it's about ensuring we have got the budget to do that, the budget's there to do that, and we've got the workforce in place and what that's going to look like. But I think that's a case of us all as a sector, ensuring that we're working with the new government which is going to be formed to ensure that, that is the priority as they're stating it's going to be.
I guess one of the other rays of hope is they've got a new and reinvigorated SOSCN to support them in the school-age childcare sector, haven't they? So anybody that's not one of those 1,000 or so members you've already got at the moment should be looking to join forces, because together we're stronger, aren't we? So
part of, it's not a big campaign on SOSCN, but part of my priority, and it still will be, is to be there to support our members. We are keen to be giving resources and information that our members are looking for. Yeah. So we've updated our website. We're putting on new membership benefits, such as like template policies that services can
just really helpful for services.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nobody's got the time. I mean, I know when I ran my service, if you had a template that you could work from as a starting point, that was you 90% there. Totally. To start something from scratch.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah. Exactly. So we we're out and about, we're hearing about what policies would help. So with our membership, we've sort of created, I think, 11 or 12 kind of new practice-based policies. A lot of the policies we had on before were very sort of business-based, used to help committees, but we've done that just so services have got these tools to you'll adapt it to your own service anyway, but it gives you certainly a really, really good starting point, and that there is hope in the sector. We want to be giving people the hope that this is an exciting time of change. Yeah. And the fact is we've never really been in this position before where the school-age sector has been recognised.
No, not at all.
So from that, it's brilliant to see that there is a recognition there. Yeah. Before school-age childcare, they're a bit like the forgotten sector. Yeah. And people in the sector will always say, "Oh, it's always about ELC," but now that actually there is a focus on school-age childcare. So from that, I think that is really hope for the sector. The fact it's been recognised as essential service it is. So again, I've been encouraging the sector to come together. Yep. Not just school-age childcare, but the whole sector. It's the same children, same families we're working with. And it's essential. And SOSCN as an organisation, we've partnered with other organisations, like yourselves, and and made really good links. Yep. And by speaking to other organisations and hearing what their priorities are, what they're working on, you're all working together on this. And I think that supports me and my role, but also supports the childcare sector in general. It does. That this is out there. I mean, it is more visual than it was before.
Definitely. And it gives us a louder voice, doesn't it? If we're raising our voices together, we're much harder to ignore for our policymakers. So, absolutely, definitely. Yeah.
And there's so many of the things that I think we all have got agreement in. Yeah,
definitely.
Flexibility for a start, meeting the needs of the children and families, So there's so much that we can all be learning from each other and basically advocating for each other as well.
Absolutely. Definitely. I'm all for that. Totally. Oh, it's been a brilliant chat, Audrey. Is there anything else that we've not talked about today that's a burning issue that you'd love to get out there and share with our listeners?
I just really want to sort of push the fact that we are here as an organisation for our members. Totally. Our manifestos out live as well. Okay. So we've shared that, and we'll be looking at speaking to engaging with the new government as soon as possible on our manifesto and on the points we've put on that.
And you're already speaking with government, sharing your members' views, haven't
Yes,
you? I know you've already
absolutely.
had a meeting this week with government.
We have done,
so,
yes.
So,
we
yeah.
have to be there for our members.
Of course you do.
To me, that is the point of our organisation. Not the main point, but one of the major points of our organisation is to be there for our members. Because I remember being in my playgroup, when it was a playgroup, it's a lonely existence. It can be a lonely existence being a manager, running your own individual group. You've got nobody really just to share ideas with or to sound things off with. And I want to see SOSCN, people thinking, we are getting more of that now, people saying, I was just going to phone you about this because I've got an issue. It could just be a very, very small issue. Even things that are organisations who are run by committees.
Yeah.
We've actually, one of the things we have done is put in a new committee guidance.
Okay.
We've added that to our website because, committees come on and you're kind of maybe bullied into a committee. Oh, you need to keep the service going. But they actually do not know what's required.
No.
It's a big ask for people to be on a committee.
It is a big ask, yeah.
So I would say we're just going to continue to work with our members in the sector. What I have seen is absolute dedication and commitment when I've been out in services. It's really, I'm not just saying it has actually blown me away as to what I've seen. We've seen services quietly offering free places or to families who they know they're in crisis. Yeah. It's done subtly, it's done under the radar. They don't shout about it. Other families do know that's happening, but they recognise this family is in a crisis at the moment or a bit of a need. And they'll just, and it doesn't maybe necessarily be for a long period of time, but enough just to get them over that hump. Yeah. It's really humbling as to what you see services actually doing to support families. Their services have got like family support in place, or they signpost families to different services. I've been in services and I've seen like continental quilts and duvets and stuff all piled up because they know of a family who need that. Yeah, absolutely. And going in, it's actually quite heartwarming to see all that going on. But again, even for children, you've seen children thrive and develop and learn to ride bikes, do baking, all these life skills that children can get. Yeah. And, it's just, a sector should be really proud of what they achieve for families and what they can give and the benefits it is to not just children and the families, but like the whole community.
Oh, totally, yeah. It really is a community thing. And it comes back to that whole, it takes a village, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So you're supporting the children, the families and the wider community. Yeah. And let's face it, the work is also supporting the local and national economy, isn't it? Because it's enabling families to work and contribute. Yeah. Yeah. So.
And, people's children's well-being, adults' well-being, if the families are actually in employment and have got work and feel as though they're contributing, that lifts the whole family.
It really does, yeah.
It's wider than just childcare.
So much wider, but it's so hard to find a word that describes all that, isn't it? Yeah. So, no, absolutely.
It's just like a commitment to ensuring that it's the best place for our children, our families to grow up in, to have a really high-quality childcare system. And that is from, ELC right
all
through.
All the way through, yeah, it is. Absolutely, yeah. Oh, Audrey, it's been a pleasure to chat today. And isn't it a wonderful sector to work in? I love it. My role as Chief Executive Flexible Childcare Services Scotland is the hardest job I have ever done, but it's the best job I've ever done in my career. I absolutely love it. And I can feel that joy in your work coming from you too. So
I do feel none of us are in this because it's an easy job.
No, definitely not. It's not an easy job. No, it's not.
But I think that shines through. And I think when you're in services, I would say, in particular school-aged childcare services, that staff in these services have probably got the option to move to another sector, but they choose not to because they've got such a passion for the sector. Yeah. And any other, other CEOs that I come across in other organisations, we've all got that same drive.
Totally.
And passion for the sector. Yep. I think when you've had children yourself as well.
I know, yeah.
I think you appreciate the support that the sector can give you.
Yeah, totally.
I know as a mum,
really
I was so appreciative of I was then
the support
my
that was available. Yeah.
And from that, it pulls you in, and you recognise if I can get that support, then I want to ensure that that's available for everybody.
Definitely, yeah. And an interesting fact for our listeners, when Audrey and I met last week, we discovered we have a 30-year-old connection from when we were both first-time mums at the neonatal intensive care unit at the fabulous Rotten Row Hospital in Glasgow at the time, which is no longer there. But thankfully, down to their care, our children are still here and are thriving. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Both premature.
Yeah. Yes.
I had premature twins, 29 weeks. Your daughter was 29 weeks as well.
Yeah.
Incredible. And as soon as we said it, I'm like, oh gosh, I do remember. Because that was a stressful
It was a harrowing time. It was, yeah, absolutely.
But whether that's another thing that pulls you into the third sector, pulls you into, ensuring that families are getting the best because you know how valuable and important it was to you.
Yeah, and it's nice to give something
It's
back.
lovely.
Yeah, Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's been a delight.